listening to the Pagan-Centered Podcast, bringing unique and intelligent perspective to the masses using contemporary technology, allowing for free discussion of one's personal beliefs and enlightenment of those not familiar with a particular religion. We bring to the forefront many issues that are ignored or shunned upon by mainstream religion. We discuss topics on a religious and non-religious level as they relate to our panel representing varied belief systems. Our brute honesty and candid opinion has made us one of the longest-running and most popular pagan podcasts. Feel welcome to call in live or submit listener feedback via our website, pagancenteredpodcast.com. And welcome to this episode of PCP, the Pagan-Centered Podcast. I'm Dave.
I'm Amber.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Scurv.
Alright, and also joining us tonight are...
I'm Barrett.
I'm Emily.
I'm Miles.
I'm Saturn.
I'm Star.
Alright, and tonight we are finally answering Emily's questions. Holy crap, we've only been putting this off for 7 weeks now. So we're going to answer all of Emily's questions about life, the universe, and everything right after these messages. And we're back. Lots of questions. So I kind of put together an outline of all the questions that were asked on askapagan.com by Emily. And I'm going to start with the section of learning metaphysics. What are your thoughts about on metaphysics teachers, those that teach metaphysics? What are our thoughts?
Just like in general?
Yeah, just in general.
Is this where everybody's trying to figure out the politically correct way to say something?
How about we just say the crazy way and people figure it out for themselves?
Pretty much. I think it's hard to find a teacher that suits you because there are so many practices in metaphysics. You have empaths, which is one whole slew of teaching, and if you are an empath and you have a teacher who isn't an empath, that causes all sorts of problems, and that's just one example. So finding somebody that can teach to you specifically can be kind of difficult, though it tends to work out when it's time, strangely enough.
I agree with that as well. I've learned that some things like mathematics, for example, is abstract. 2 + 2 is 4, and everybody knows that. But metaphysics is a much more amoebus, I suppose, topic. And with many of us being as spiritual and as spiritually sensitive as we can be, that one person's take on metaphysics might not reflect somebody else's, and so these students might not embrace what the teacher is trying to teach. But as Amber said as well, the right teacher often comes along at the right time.
And there was one comment that was brought up on the message board, was basically try to have different teachers. Don't limit yourself to just one teacher. You know, maybe do like in academia where you have different teachers for different things.
You know what? And that's a really good idea too. Go ahead, Star.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I agree with that, but I think it's easier to not try to learn from a bunch of different people all at once. Get a feel for one person's metaphysical system and teaching, and then once you feel you've got that, then move on. Because if you're trying to to learn too much at once, it can get kind of confusing.
Well,
Go ahead.
Sorry?
something not to entirely exclude as well. A good book. I know it's not always as good as a flesh and blood person, but books do have certain advantages.
That will
You
be
can reread
discussed
them.
later.
True. You can reread them. You don't hurt their feelings. You know, all things.
Yeah,
They don't drive you insane.
Yeah, but there's certain disadvantages to Saturn's echoing like crazy. Echo. Oh, that's
No,
two
it's
guns.
Brandon that's echoing.
Me?
Yes.
Mute and then unmute with your headset.
Will do.
Echo. That's better. The books have a lot of disadvantages too. One thing that you do get out of a book is a lot of formalized knowledge, but you don't get a whole lot of the. Oh man, now Amber's echoing.
What the hell?
Echo.
Better?
Echo. That's still a little bit there, but I can live with that. Books have their own disadvantages. You're getting very formalized, very, strict kind of take on things, whereas a teacher, you kind of you can get a feel for them. You can get a feel for them as a person. You can see if there's someone you can trust, whereas a book, you kind of have to have your own BS meter and rely on that and hope that the BS meter is, properly calibrated. Whereas, and also, with a book is people tend not to share their more crazier, non-mainstream ideas through a book. They'll keep that to themselves and maybe share that orally, but they won't put that in writing.
Well, one thing though about having a teacher, is if you have a teacher and you're taking classes with other people, that you can learn as much from the other students sometimes as you can from the teacher.
Yeah, that is a really good example.
That's true. In the book I wrote, I do specify in the introduction that the book itself is not meant to be the end-all and be-all of the learning experience. It's actually 1/3. I'd like it to be what's offered in the book as well as what the teacher's input is, as well as discussion among the classroom.
I think sometimes there's this romanticized idea of finding a teacher, like it's going to be this wise sage that should take you away up in the mountains and, you have this exclusive one-on-one teaching aspect, and when you come down out of the mountain, you're like Moses or something like that, and that's really not the way it works most times.
It has never been my ideal to become Charlton Heston in any form or shape.
Good. He'd look horrible in pink hair.
This is true. No, I think that's true. I think that there is an idea sometimes that, teachers are awesome and teachers will know everything, and we forget sometimes that teachers are human beings who are as flawed as we are. And that's something good to keep in mind. And I think that's one reason why you should, have different teachers and work with different people, at least for a while, until you can get a feel of, what's what and what styles work for you.
Yeah, and keep in mind, books have editors. Teachers tend not to have editors.
Mm-hmm.
Not all books have editors.
Unfortunately.
But many aren't good enough. I've made quite a bit of money sending letters to publishing companies saying you missed this and this and this.
So the fundamental question seems to be boiling down to should someone that's looking to learn seek out a teacher?
It varies person to person. Some people need someone to show them what to do. Some people need to try things on their own. It all depends on what your personality is. Did you enjoy school, or was it a miserable experience for you? The learning process itself, mind you.
Hi, Ashley. I'm sorry.
I think if you're trying to learn, starting out, seek out a group before you seek out a teacher. You might find a teacher in the group, or you might be able to bounce ideas off the people in the group.
Yeah, in Clarion, that's how a lot of us did it.
Mm-hmm. Any time that I had this urge to seek out a teacher, it kind of came back and smacked me in the face. So there were times when I would find people that I would think, yeah, this person really seems to know what they're doing, and I could learn off of them. And I think the main thing I learned was, I forget who said it, I think it was Star, that yeah, they're just human. They have faults like everybody else, and they're not really, it's not that I didn't learn other things off of them, but they're just people who happen to have information that's good to share. So the best learning experience goes back to finding groups and just sharing stories with people half the time.
I think there's also something to be said that when you're looking for a teacher, if someone is knowledgeable, that's great. But if they're making a big deal over all of the esoteric knowledge that they have and that they may one day teach you, that may be a warning sign.
And that's the big thing about, the big con of having a teacher is you're dealing with egos again. You're dealing with human flaws,
Yep.
And fundamentally that means you're dealing with the potential for manipulation. And that doesn't mean that books are exempt from manipulation. I mean, we all know that from Silver Ravenwolf's books. But, with teachers, we seem to see that as more prevalent.
One of the first teachers I ever had was a lady who would, on first day, first class, would stand up in front of the classroom and say, "You will never be the witch that I am." And some people would go, "Well, the heck with you, lady, I'm out of here." It's all about some ego battle. And some of them would say, "Well, yeah, no, duh, I'm not you." And the point that he was trying to make by saying that is that every one of us is an individual, and even if she teaches you everything that she knows, your interpretation of what she teaches you will not exactly reflect how she uses it. So every one of us will end up being different anyway.
I like that a lot.
Yay.
I think we already pretty much covered that. How do you know if your teacher's any good or if you need to worry yourself? I think a couple of warning signs are that I will teach you instead of them actually teaching you. Or that I am awesome and you will eventually know this, blah, blah, blah. And
Yes.
It's like buying into housing development or one of those planned communities. All this crap that's coming soon is irrelevant. What do you got now?
Right.
I really hate when you see online all those websites that are saying, if you give us this much money, we're going to show you how to do this, and you will be able to do this. And they're always the first things that come up anytime you search pretty much anything involving metaphysics. And they're the worst possible examples for people starting out.
Yeah, but you tend to see that a lot in the organized schools. The online so-called witch schools. It's like, I don't know. I just don't. If you're going to learn online, learn from a forum. Don't learn from a site that you got to pay for, because the quality of material probably isn't all that much better than what you're getting in a free forum. And if you're looking for something beyond what you get on internet forums, interact with people in real life. The whole flesh and bone thing kind of helps people be a little more sane and a little more willing to help you out.
Here's an idea. Pardon. Here's an idea for interaction. Find a pagan pride day or spirit gathering or some other miscellaneous event and show up.
That's right.
I mean, it's no guarantee that you're going to walk away with a teacher or any smarter. Heck, you might even find yourself being a teacher. You never know. But, I mean, it tilts the odds of something happening greatly. I mean, that whole interacting with the outside world, you'd be amazed what happens.
I run screaming from the idea of people having me teach them.
Yes, but you're here.
Well, I don't mind giving advice.
But it's just the idea of somebody
Advice
running
is
up
like
to you and
gentle
going,
teaching.
teach me.
Yeah, the idea of being solely responsible for the outcome of someone else's spirituality, really, just, I don't mind suggestions and, the whole advice thing, but someone depending solely upon me, just, no thank you. Please.
Yeah, I have coven mates who are like all excited about getting the opportunity to teach classes, and I'm like, yeah, not me. Y'all can handle that. Just tell me where to bring the potato salad.
One thing that we touched on that it's kind of close with people going and saying, oh, I can teach you, is the idea of there's a lot of people who are looking for teachers, and there's one person in particular that starts with an L and ends with an UPA. That has a tendency, when we had met her, to, oh, you learned that way. I know a lot of people are making that mistake. I can show you how to fix it if you like. So they take this backwoods or background way of kind of telling you, like, oh, you've done a good job so far, but I can fix it.
And that's why her ferret played with her dildo in front of everybody.
Yeah.
God was punishing her for being a douchebag.
Okay, good. Actually, one reason that I like to teach is the old adage, teach and learn twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the patience. Oh, I'm sorry. But I don't have the patience for teaching, because if they don't listen the first time, I would just want to beat them mercilessly. I don't get it. Well, you get it if I smash you in the face a couple times. I don't have the patience.
That doesn't really help.
I know, so that's why I don't teach.
GBH does not lead to enlightenment. You know what GBH is?
Some sort of drug?
No, GBH, grievous bodily harm.
Oh, that too.
Does not lead to enlightenment.
The beatings.
Why not?
Why not? Because if you're comatose, you don't know what they're saying.
It will continue until test scores improve.
I mean, some of the way old school, monks actually kind of tortured their bodies to increase their mental focus. Just saying.
I was going to say, if you get the shit kicked out of you by a bear or some other animal, you're like, oh, probably shouldn't do that again.
Well, yes. And you learn not to mess with a bear. True.
But learning physics, it might be a whole nother thing.
Well, true. Of course, there's a difference as well between teaching and learning. Because a good teacher can teach, but a good teacher is useless if the students are not willing to learn.
One thing, I've taken some classes on metaphysics, and to be honest, they weren't. My brain was kind of mush afterwards, and so one thing that I've actually decided I'm going to do this year is I have the opportunity to sit on all those classes again. So sometimes you don't get it the first time, but that doesn't mean that there's not something to learn. Sometimes you have to revisit something before it clicks. At least I hope so.
So the next question is, in the past few decades, there has been a growing trend of people who learn solely from books. Do you think this trend will continue?
Definitely.
Well, it'll continue. It won't dominate. It'll continue. There's always people who will learn just from books because they're introverts. And people prefer to learn from books because they're afraid to meet someone else face to face, which might be because they're just afraid of people or because they're unsure of testing what they've learned against what somebody else knows, or they might just be afraid that somebody else might ask them questions that they can't answer. Will they learn exclusively from books? I hope not, because especially in something as personal as witchcraft, I think that you need personal interaction, need able to bounce what you know off somebody else as well, so that you get more of a personal feel for what you're doing, I think.
Well, I think one of the things that happened that led to this trend of a lot of people learning from books is a lot of people got interested in, well, let's just say Wicca. I mean, because that seems to have been the gateway religion up till about 2005. People got interested in it, and they all were part of the pagan community, so they were just like, oh, this is something cool, let me do some research on it, and I just kept reading and reading and reading, and then all of a sudden we had this population explosion of pagans, and I think now we got so many pagans out there that the need to learn from a book isn't as prevalent as it used to be. I mean, there might still be that preference to look at books as, at least a preliminary means of getting familiar with a theological background of a religion, but I think there isn't going to be that need where, oh my God, I don't know anybody else that practices the religion. Okay, I need to get a book on it.
My feeling is that currently both books and teachers are sort of transforming. So I think both will still be growing and I think they'll be pretty much on par. But they do seem to be transforming. People who are giving classes today seem to be adjusting and doing things a little differently than people did 10 years ago. And the books seem to be changing. Like Christopher Penzak's book series on witchcraft is practically a homeschool course on witchcraft. So I think both are changing and both are still going to be very popular.
I think it would be interesting to see if a lot of these up-and-coming pagan teachers, I mean, one that comes off the top of my head is Teeth on Coil, but if a lot of these people that are teachers and they've been teaching in their particular traditions all these times, when they start writing books, because that's going to be very interesting. Like, I know Teeth on Coil already has books out, but I think as more of these people that have experience with teaching, it's kind of like what you see in academia where, professors over time, they're like, I can't find a good book to teach this, screw it, I'm just writing a book. And then they get it published, and oh my God, we got an amazing textbook now.
Well, I think that's always been an interesting thing about the pagan community is that you have the authors who may or may not be teachers themselves. But so much of the grassroots change in paganism actually comes from teachers who teach for years and they never ever publish anything. And I've always found that fascinating.
Now, is the whole thing where people are starting to read books, is that even after, like, the internet and things are so easy, like you might have someone who gets all their information about Wicca from Wikipedia?
We still see a lot of book learners now, even with the internet. I mean, I don't think that's really gone away.
Okay. I was just curious.
I just think it's less
I've always preferred to go from books primarily, and then after I've picked up new theories to compare it with the people I know.
I mean, I think as far as primers go, I think ultimately that the internet will still be the primary source of, hey, I just heard about Thelema. What the heck is this Thelema thing? Let me punch it into Google and see what pops up. I mean, as far as like just get a brief summary of what something is, I think the internet will still be the main way of doing that. But I think as far as once you are set on going into a religious path, Yeah, you do got to learn to get out there and interact with people in the flesh.
I mean, if you mix, I think book learning and people learning and internet learning, those are always going to be there. Miles touched on people being introverted and things like that. So even though that people are becoming more mainstream and we're having larger groups, you'll always have the people that they don't want to go with a group directly, that they're just going to feel comfortable reading a book first. And even if they never seek out a group to learn off of, even going to a pagan pride day and just talking, interacting with people without the intention of learning off of them, you'll still have that learning that happens just from social interaction.
Yeah, and let me take this from the opposite perspective. If you're organizing a Pagan Pride Day, please ensure your event very much encourages interpersonal discourse. People that don't know each other to talk to each other.
Well, mine do. Yes, I plan that and build them around the plan that people will get together and talk and actually get to know each other.
Off a slight tangent here, but something else to consider is when you're doing your research on metaphysics, let's not forget history.
True.
I mean, granted, as far as a metaphysics primer, it might be a little lackluster, but it'll teach you much of the language. It'll teach you where what you're learning is coming from.
Well, I would question history. I would have to ask, whose history do you choose to read? If you choose to read history as perceived by Margaret Murray, that would not reflect the history as written by, what's his name? Ashley Montague, I think it was. And that would not reflect history as written by, let's say, Fred Phelps. So I hope Fred Phelps doesn't write a history book.
I'd actually like to see that.
I wouldn't.
I'd view it more as a work of fiction, but I would like to see it.
It would probably be very amusing.
Hey, can I make a pause point here? I got to switch batteries on the recorder. Sorry.
Okay.
Nobody say anything intelligent.
Why is the recorder battery powered? There's this thing called plugs and walls, no?
Well, these good recorders don't do that.
There are advantages to battery powered, like lack of ground loop feedback and other.
Yeah, you have no idea how much better power battery is for sound.
Yeah, that's
really okay. I didn't know that.
Okay, we are recording again.
All right. See, that's why me setting this camera here aimed at the screen and all that stuff and picking up the audio is not entirely a bad thing as well, because, well, there's no ground loop feedback, and in case the worst should happen, I'm not sitting there, or Amber Lady's not sitting there for 12 hours working miracles with static.
Right.
High pass, low pass, high pass, low pass.
Vocal remover. Okay.
Well, if you
now subtracting noise from the sound. Sorry.
If you choose to incorporate history into your learning, then you should, I think, read from a, especially for as controversial as our faith has been throughout history, that you should read from several different authors and get several different takes on how they perceived our presence through history. Some people would have said that this is all just devil worship and we're all selling our souls to the devil, and some people would say we're all just fools making it all up as we go. Some people think we're all just gypsies trying to rip off the main compilation, but they all believe that their version of history was the right one. So you have to make your history research is well-rounded.
True.
Well, you know, it's worthwhile too as you encounter different history books and different figures from history to do some research on them. You can do a web research on Alexander's and Robert Cochrane, Gerald Gardner, Margaret Murray, and just a quick web search will give you all of the controversies that these figures have been embroiled in over the years. So don't take someone's book, as the gospel, and research the people who are writing as well, because we have very interesting personalities in our community, and sometimes they have their own agenda.
Wikipedia is pretty good at tracking drama.
Yeah, just look at the discussions page.
Yeah.
Go to Wikipedia, look something up, and click on that little discussions tab at the top, and you'll see all the drama surrounding a topic.
It's also awesome for farming resources.
Yep. So Emily goes on to say that in her experience, she's seen a counter trend of people seeking teachers developing. This is something we have seen in the wider community.
Counter trend of people seeking teachers. Does that mean more people seeking physical teachers who teach them? Like, is the counter trend implies an opposite of the previous question?
I think it's the opposite of people that are learning solely from books.
Ah, good. Okay. Counter trend of people seeking teachers developing. Well, I would have to say, and at least this was true, let's say 6 years ago, when everyone who could make a GeoCities page online and put all this flashy crap up that they wanted to, and tried to pass themselves off as legit witches. If you visit enough of those, you get the idea that some of those are very probably crap, and so you will want to find someone to ask face-to-face, one-to-one, what's right and what's wrong. I mean, I met someone who claimed that she was a member of a Gardnerian coven going back 7 generations. Quick, do the math.
Yeah. 7 generations in 60-ish
Yeah.
years.
Did that involve time travel?
Oh man, they got pregnant early. That's sick. 8 years old?
So she's 7th generation of a bunch of preschoolers.
Pretty much. So, yes, you have to learn. And she...
I don't even think that's fail.
That's like explosive fail. Books.
We need a new fail category. Wow.
Epic.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Gardner was really a Time Lord. That's how they did it.
Well, he is British.
Hey, so am I.
Miles could be a Time Lord.
I do have a blue box. I do.
Yes!
I do have a blue box.
You're a Time Lord. That's because you're wicked.
It's not bigger on the inside than the outside. It doesn't flash and make this whoop whoop sound, but it is a box and it is blue. So
I have a blue box that really is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, and it makes whooshing sounds. And it takes me through space and time. Unfortunately, it only goes forward in time. In real
Dave,
time.
that's because you're a Time Lord, because you're Wiccan, because all Wiccans are Time Lords now.
oh lordy.
Says the Satanist.
Among the various crazy teachers or crazy people trying to pass themselves off as teachers that I've known in the past was one who comes to mind, who would have a one-to-one private meeting with each prospective student and would tell each one if they could or could not join her class. I was told I could not join her class because he could tell that I was not a transcendent space elf from the Pleiades star cluster.
That's because you're a Time Lord. You're
I wish I was
not a space elf. You're a
I
time
wish I was making that up. You have to be transcendent space elves from the Pleiades star cluster.
Oh,
That's
man.
who she took.
You should have
You
slapped
are
her.
formally invited to our next Otherkin episode.
Thank
And
you.
Your teacher, or that
That
would-be
one?
teacher.
Oh,
I believe
seen
that
her
any
in 20
class.
years.
Sorry. But I believe that any class that denies people outright definitely should be dropped by anyone in the class. Because if they're refusing to teach certain people, it probably means they'll either see through the bullshit,
Yes.
excuse my language, or they themselves don't have anything to teach the person, which means that they obviously aren't very advanced.
Never mind
You
about
know,
a man
well,
behind
any.
the curtain.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just making reference of a line from a movie of someone who really does not have all the answers, but wants you to think he does. And the famous line, I know you've seen the movie, was "Never mind about the man behind the curtain."
Well,
That's perfect.
You know, if any class is worth anything, especially if it's like a series of classes, you know, like a Wicca 101 course, then the classes should be sufficiently hard enough that it weeds out people who aren't serious.
Yes.
So the work itself should do the weeding out, and that's just sort of
Exactly.
my opinion.
I agree. It shouldn't
And I'm
be
not
the
even
teacher,
a Time Lord.
right? It shouldn't be the teacher saying, no, I'm not going to teach you. It should be the lesson saying, you need to study more before you come here.
I mean, I know in the native traditions, you'll find a lot of teachers who, instead of answering your questions, will answer your question with a question on what you think about it. And
Yes.
so many people will get so frustrated because they just want somebody to tell them what this means. They'll have a prophetic dream and they're like, well, what does this mean? And they'll just sit there.
Well, I mean, here again, we're getting into all the problems of having a human teacher is, you know, okay, the teacher wants to, so you might get a teacher that wants to give them the answer so that exerts that, hey, I know more than you, I have power over you, I can control your knowledge. And you get the people that are trying to learn, they're like, oh, okay, he gave me the answer I wanted, I'll stick with this teacher. I don't want to do the teacher that doesn't give me what I want. And I think what we need is exactly what Star said. We need to be willing to have people fail out of classes. I mean, you know, we got to get out of this mentality that people should be all welcomed, and regardless of how little effort they want to exert on a tradition or in a group or whatever. I mean, there needs to be a point where we say, no, you're not exerting enough effort to carry your weight around here.
Well, see, I think everyone should be welcome, but that, like Star said, the level of work should be to the point where people who shouldn't be in the class leave themselves, not, you're not good enough.
Exactly.
Right.
Or, you know.
The first few classes, and actually, this will sound a bit harsh, I think, but the first few classes should be boring enough that those people who aren't really into it and just want to will say, oh, well, it is no fun, and we'll leave. Because
You're not
really,
going to teach me how to throw fireballs. I'm leaving.
I want to learn how to throw fireballs right now. What's a spell to throw fireballs, you know? But in truth, for every Hermione in a class, you've got 10 Ron What's-His-Faces who don't know it as well, you know, or aren't as educated as your star pupils are.
In my tradition, our first three classes are protocol, laws, and tenets. and they're kind of boring, and there is a lot of handwriting. A lot of handwriting. and yeah, so
Your
even
teacher
I
got
was
the
like,
memo.
by the end of tenants, I was just like, come on, really?
And in my first class, in first class I teach is what is witchcraft and what is witchcraft not. Then there's 3 classes on history, then it goes into philosophy, just to get all the groundwork down. You don't learn spells and all that nifty stuff until you get past 101, which is where the teacher can tell who's not going to, those people who just don't get it, and that's a chance to weed out in Deadwood. Then you can proceed into 102, and that's where you learn magic. And you have to get the foundations down first. You can't run and you'll learn how to walk.
Well,
I think. Go ahead, Scurvy.
Here's a nifty thought when it comes time to learning things like philosophy and all that other fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe spend just a little bit of time in mundane academia.
Go to the library, read books. Yes.
Yeah. Heck, even if you want to stick to the fiction, a lot of fiction makes it a point to drive home a moral story or a moral point. Maybe spend a little bit of time thinking about that, particularly from the devil's advocate point of view.
I mean, I think we touched on it in a couple other episodes, but learning metaphysics is no different than learning, or should be no different than learning any other thing that takes expertise, whether you take martial arts, ballet, painting, car mechanics. You shouldn't have your first week of class learning how to throw punches, learning how to do pirouettes, learning how to take an engine apart. Everything, for a while, is going to be your boring basics and should be the boring basics.
Elementary comes first.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
If not, one way or another, you're going to end up getting hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a wonderful learning experience, so... I mean, at least there's that, but I would hope that most people don't have to learn after they fall face down on concrete.
Walk before you run.
But it's fun to watch people fall face down on concrete.
While throwing fireballs.
I think the only fireball I was in involved propane. And,
Did it involve gamma?
No, this would involve a sibling and, less, how do I say this? No fault protection in the instructions.
And mine involved a 4-alarm chili burrito. But never mind.
Mine involved flour and a lighter.
Yes.
Yay.
Alright, so before this turns into the anarchist cookbook here, what do we see as the future of metaphysical teachers?
I was just thinking, I wonder how many fires I just started.
Let's hope we can cut that down.
Hey kids! Hey kids, Mentos candy in a Coke bottle.
That's fun. But back to the metaphysics teacher.
I know, sorry.
I see it going just where it has been. You're always going to have the balance of really awesome teachers, really craptastic teachers. I mean, look at how long have the Christian faiths been around, and they're still going through those cycles. Yes, some of it's a little more obvious, but I think you're always going to have that. You're always going to have the ones that stick to books. You're always going to have the ones. So I think that it's going to change A little bit, just like a pendulum swing, and it's just going to go back and forth, but that's just me.
Yeah, I just don't see. Usually things only change, on such a scale where there's a major disruptive force. I just don't see any major disruptive forces as far as teaching metaphysics anytime soon.
I think if we do see one change, I think it will be for good or bad. I think it will be the rise of like superstar teachers. And I don't mean that in a bad way. But that there will be people who are really popular who are going to teach, and they're going to have a lot of students. We're starting to see that with some of the schools that have started up online. And I think there might be an increase in that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, online schools so far have, maybe with exception of, the seminaries, for by and large, a lot of them are still your crappy, stereotypical witch school.
Well, right, but then there are people like Tethor and Coil who they teach through their online school, and that's how they teach their students all across the country is online. So, and I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty certain that people like Fiona Horn and other people who have just really become popular for whatever reason, are probably going to capitalize on that. So I mean, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's good because when there's really awesome teachers, I think that there will be more access to being taught directly by them. And on the other hand, when they're really crappy Paris Hilton-ish type teachers, there will be more access to being taught directly by them. So
something else I've seen happen as well is that in the pre-internet age, when you really could, you might find a teacher who, if you ask them a question about, about drawing down the god or something, would say, not yet. That's a third-degree question. You aren't a third-degree student yet. But these days, when everything is accessible online, including learning how to draw down the god, I think metaphysical teachers of the future will have to deal with the instant availability of all the information a kid needs, and they'll have to try and tell students what is relevant now and what will be relevant later in your studies when you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, throttling of material that is covered is no longer going to be a matter of withholding material. I mean, I think that's absolutely the change that happened with the internet age, like you said.
Yes.
But I think some traditions are actually adapting to that, and so they're crafting their mysteries in a way that cannot be easily shared, in that way. And then there are groups, and I'm obviously not members of those groups, so I can't really speak for them. But I'm told that you can have a Gardnerian Book of Shadows, but without the oral lore to unlock that, you'll never actually understand that text. That's only half of the puzzle. So I don't really think that the internet has sort of done away with the oath-bound and secretive mystery traditions so much as it's just made them adapt to a new era.
One thing that comes with public knowledge comes public scrutiny. So
yes.
You might wind up with a lot of these traditions adapting so that their core mysteries sound crazy. And that element of I don't want to be looked at as a crazy person among my peers kicks into play, and that's how the information stays, shall we say, not dispersed over the interwebs.
Yeah, someone once told me that the gods of their tradition were very local tribal gods from England, and but you didn't actually know their actual names until you reached the 3rd degree. And I remember thinking at the time how pissed I would be if I had spent 10 years working towards my 3rd degree and I got there and found out it was like Robin Hood and Marion, and I would have been like, really? Seriously?
Well, geez, I knew that bloody way back when. That's not a big deal.
Yeah, I'm not terribly pleased about this.
That, or else if you spent all this time learning and training and getting ready to meet this amazing, massive manifestation of the Horn God, and you find out that his name is Bob.
Yeah.
That would suck. I want some really cool, impressive name. You know, Bob. I'm Bob the God. No, you're not. Sit down.
Well, it could be worse. The name of your God could be God. All right, so let's move on to the next section of questions that Emily had for us. What do you think the future of metaphysics in a world that wants everything now? In a path that requires a lot of time and effort, yet our society, pagans included, prefer things to be fast and easy. As paganism becomes more mainstream, will we see a shift towards non-metaphysical paths? So I'm not really sure. Emily, where were you going with this?
I'm not sure I really remember. That was like 2 months ago when I wrote that question.
As paganism becomes more mainstream, you see a shift toward non-metaphysical paths. What I get from that question is that you're not looking so much into knowing the gods as knowing the basics of herbalism, knowing just hands-on in the dirt witchcraft, not witchcraft in the metaphysical sense, but witchcraft in the herbal lore and what heals a cold sense, I think.
You know what I kind of see in this question is you have like Christianity, and Christianity's mystery is completely open. Everyone knows the mystery of Christianity, and everybody knows it in its very most basic reduced form. And metaphysical paths, pagan paths, tend to be very complex. And,
I see.
Yeah, and so I could see
higher secrets.
Yeah, and I can already see that happening where there is sort of this very basic open source paganism out there that doesn't have a lot of layers, doesn't have a lot of complexity, it doesn't have a lot of mystery. It's just sort of we're all about A, B, and C, and that's it. It's very accessible, but it's,
open source paganism. I'm a Linux witch.
Yeah,
free BSD for the win.
I was actually talking to one of my friends that's a little bit more well-traveled, and there's certain countries out there that have switched to Christianity basically for the main reason that the old traditions just took up too much time in this modern age. Too many different holidays, too many things that you had to do, and switching to other religions just simplified life. They still acknowledge their old gods, but they're like, the culture has just become so fast moving that they really didn't have the time, energy, so on and so forth to do what they used to.
I choose monotheism because that's one-stop shopping like Walmart.
Pretty much.
Wow. That's a bit creepy.
Horrifying,
also,
isn't
you have
it?
all of your doctrine given to you by, depending on which faith you have, but, the Roman Catholic Church is out of Rome, and you have different bases around the world for different versions of Christianity that are saying this is a doctrine, this is what you teach, it's cookie cutter, and quick, easy, simple.
Fast food religion.
Yeah, basically.
That's a good point because, not every branch of Christianity believes this, but for a lot of the branches of Christianity, you know, your basis of faith is the Nicene Creed. And if you believe the Nicene Creed, then you're a Christian. It's all reduced down into this very small piece of text. And I know that when I find it really frustrating too sometimes, but not frustrating. Frustrating because they want things to be more simply, so that when I'm trying to talk about paganism to people who are Christian, they're like, no, I just want you to give me the basics. And I'm like, well, you don't quite understand how we work. We don't have a Nicene Creed. We don't have, you know, some very simple boiled down, this is X who we are. Who we are is too organic and holistic and wide ranging to boil down. And that's just speaking as a Wiccan. If you take paganism as a whole, I mean, there's just no way.
Yeah,
I
mean, last year's showed that we couldn't even come up with a pagan standard code of sexual conduct. I mean, come on.
Right. I just had a thought and it just left my head. Oh, yes. It does seem to me sometimes that in the fast food want it all now world, which you seem to imply things are going, is that you don't have to look inside to find the answers. Someone should just hand you all the answers gift wrapped in a nice shiny box. So there's no personal introspection required at all. You just open the box and blam, there's all the answers. Whereas we find, I think, that at least half the answers that we need come from within after we've spent time looking for them.
You know, one of my favorite movies is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And my favorite part of that is the one where Delmer gets saved. And he goes into the river and he gets baptized and he jumps out and he's like, that's it. I'm forgiven. All my sins have been washed away. The law ain't looking for me no more. Because he thought it was just that simple. That you could just do this one thing without any introspection, without any repentance, without paying back society. And not only were his sins forgiven, but all of his felonies as well.
Nice.
God may forgive you, but I don't.
Well, something to keep in mind when you're the more pagan faiths tend to place a lot of emphasis on self-development. I mean, if you show up to some form of gathering and you're not familiar with the terms meditate on something other than an academic level, you're right there. It's showing that you lack a common grounds for discussion for a significant portion of the people there. I mean, it's, granted, insert other words that mean similar things to meditate as needed, but you get the idea.
Well,
a lot of people from a certain monotheistic faith I'm not going to mention are instructed that that is the devil's tool. Not all of them, but I mean, it gives you an idea where the mindset is when
thinking bad.
When you're coming to the point where you want to talk to somebody from a certain monotheistic faith, if you have a background there, good. So much the better. If you don't,
many times, though, they don't either. That's okay. Many times, though, they don't either. I've seen some absolutely devout Christians who might have a Bible in their house. I doubt they've ever read it. It's been noted that an atheist or an agnostic will read the Bible much more carefully than any Christian. So if you, like, when I read the Bible a while ago, because I wanted to finally see what everyone else was talking about, and so I read the Bible. I confess I was more confused after reading it than before I began. I would ask Christians questions about things I had found in the Bible that confused me, and they didn't have the answers. It was very disappointing.
Leviticus? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, tons of places.
Well, I was raised Southern Baptist, and I from the, I live up here in the mountains and the hills and the hollers, and so especially as a teenager, I really had to endure a lot of really bad preaching from people who simply felt called. And that was all that was really necessary. You said that you felt called to stand up and preach, and so someone would let you drone on for an hour without even having a good idea of what the biblical basis of your sermon was. And so that was a little bit frustrating. And, it's also... the whole idea of Christians not always being the most literate of their own religion. I actually, one of my favorite movies of all time, I'm such a dork, is Prince of Egypt. It's the story of Moses in Egypt, and it, people sing, and it's cartoon, and it's fun, and and I was watching it with a Sunday school teacher one time, and I had to explain the story of Moses to her.
Oh, Lord.
Wow. And I was like, I was blown away. I had to explain to her who like Aaron and Miriam were, and I was like, I knew this when I was 10, man.
I know they got upset when I would ask questions in CCD class, and I will never forget Saturn, I think it was next to your house, that there was a church with, one of the changing letter signs, and had in big letters, "The first step to finding God is not to think."
That's it?
that was it.
Anti-intellectualism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, for a long time, it was, you couldn't read the Bible. I mean, it was like a mystery. It was considered like this magical book, and only priests could read it and touch it. And sometimes I think that part of what has influenced paganism is the Reformation of the church, where suddenly the Bible was in everyone's hands, and everyone had an opinion, and everyone's opinion was valid. And so I sometimes wonder how Protestantism has affected paganism. And then to go off on a tangent, it seems like we're affecting them because they tend to be mimicking us once again with these small organic churches that sound very pagan.
Well, they sound very grassroots, and they sound very close to the family-ish, which is good, I think.
I'll be sure to find a certified organic church nearby.
I know for a long time that Rome stated that you were not allowed to translate the Bible out of Latin because it gave them the power over the people, because people were speaking, Spanish, English, Gaelic, so on and so forth throughout Europe. And with it being unified, it sort of put the priests in a power position because you had to go through them to get to God.
You mean just like those metaphysical teachers we told you to stay away from about 15 minutes ago?
Yep. And then it totally became open source Christianity.
It is, but that's no
and
help,
people
though.
still don't get it.
Well,
wait. Sorry. So if it's open source Christianity, could we then assume that most Christians are script kiddies?
Well, yes, it's open source, but remember also that until, let's say, 150 50 years ago, a huge percentage of the population could not read. So if there was a Bible in the house, that's all very nice, but it has words in it. It's the book of God. It must be the book of God because they told me so. I can't read the damn thing because I can't read. So they just assume it's full of truth and mystery.
That's a good
that's
point.
one thing that I've seen a lot of people that they'll use things in other languages, especially when doing metaphysics work, expecting that because it's in another language, it is somehow magically holy and magically more spiritual because it's in another language.
Well, actually, that does have a use. If I can go off on a slight tangent, it's because if it's in a language you don't understand, that your conscious brain disconnects from it, and it's just the intent speaking to your subconscious. It's the same way, like in Pentecostalism, the speaking in tongues, the glossolalia. It's not so much that they are speaking in a different language, but what they're communicating is pure intent rather than something structured and something very, very, very structured. And I hate to use the whole left brain, right brain thing. It's more disconnected from your conscious and more plugged into your subconscious.
But I wonder if there's a part of the Akashic records, like those kanji sites we have on the internet, where people actually translate these Japanese symbols they get put on them because it's a different language. It's so freaking cool. And then you find out that the translation is "woman with wide canyon" or other insulting or gibberish phrases.
Right. The reason I think that speaking in different languages, speaking in tongues, like Harja's head is so evocative, is that it does detach you from the known world, from the words that you know, and move you into a world of words that you don't know. So you have to rely on feelings and not the logic behind the word.
See, but my mind goes, well, if we can all realize this, then screw the words, use your intent, and what's the problem with it? That's just me.
Well, I like the practice of where people take this a step further, and instead of going for words that they don't know, they go for vibrations in their body, and they use their voice as a tool to trigger the body to vibrate, which is kind of a cool sensation. It's a physical sensation, but it is still really cool. And then they use that as a metaphysical tool.
I play a didgeridoo, and that's fun.
Yeah, see, I'll do that kind of thing. But as far as, like, the actual words and, acknowledge it as a vibration, and that's all well and good. Acknowledge speaking in tongues for what it is. But I guess I just have a problem with people not accepting things as they are. They have to make up this gibberish to make everything amazingly mystical when really the obvious answer is right there. They just don't want to look at it.
Or you could do like me and Ashley.
Thou canst not appreciate thine own ritualist nithist. That's what gets me, is the people who feel like they need to make it sound old. Not that they need to make it a different language, but that they need to make it sound ridiculously old.
Or you could do like me and Ashley in Ritual and just say something ridiculous just to get the vibrations going.
What will we do again?
0118 in the middle of Ritual.
Oh, God.
We almost got our asses kicked for that one.
Is that the one we did when we were proclaiming peace in the grove?
Yep, that's the one. We were trying to get some vibrations going to fucking speed up that ritual.
Oh, cool. My God. The Guardian should be guarding. Oh, bitch. Oh, you want to see guarding? Here. Boom! How's that for guarding?
Well, we were doing so good for the cuss word count.
Yeah.
She made me very mad.
Yeah, Kelly Mays, you make us angry.
Kelly Mays. Kelly Mason.
Hey, Dave, read us the next question.
Next question. Will we see a rise in instant witch kits?
I think we already have.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
yes.
I repressed that.
Actually, it's been that for years. I think that if you go to a Botanica and buy a Bring Love to Me candle, that is it's an instant spell kit. I don't know if it's an instant witch kit. Like, you get all these things in one box. Just to have all these things in the box doesn't make you a witch. If you have an Athame and a pentacle and a chalice and a robe in your possession, just having those things doesn't make you a witch. It just means you have these things. You know? If the instant witch kit is a bunch of things to practice witchcraft with, snap your fingers and boom, I'm doing witchcraft, look at me. This is witchcraft, oh, this is cool. That's not witchcraft, and that's serial filler is what that is. It's fake. And I think eventually people will see that it's fake.
You know, every October they sell instant witch kits. They come with the wart and the green face paint and the hat and the whole
Yes. Well done. Yes, they do.
Well, here's my only input on this. I would say this politely.
It's
Pretend that whatever you're buying, if you have to buy it, that you're going to have somebody you respect later look at it. And use this to generate some perspective, some sober second thoughts.
Like buying a tattoo.
Yeah, I mean...
It'll be there in 10 years. Will you still want it in 10 years?
Or, closer to the heuristic I like to use in everyday life. If this goes wrong, how stupid am I going to feel explaining it?
How stupid will you feel explaining a Hello Kitty Athame?
Oh my god.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's...
I've seen one of those.
Oh my god, wow. Miles.
What? No, I'm serious. No, I didn't buy it. Sit down.
Amber's closest. Sick 'em.
So did somebody else have it, or was like in a shop?
And it was in a shop. It was for sale.
That's disgusting. I can see
somebody made, it was handmade, a Hello Kitty Athame. Yes.
I can see someone doing that to their own Athame. I don't know what God would respect you after that. Like, oh no. You're not doing a ritual involving me with that thing. I think if
I totally want one.
You would just have random rituals for gods you didn't like just to piss them off.
I think that sort of goes back to a certain fighter view that we had a couple of years ago that every once in a while gets brought up.
Cough, cough, Cowboy Bebop and Go On You.
Yeah.
Oh, my soul.
I love
but
that
I mean,
show.
even eBay has witch kits and genie bottles and fairy rings and fairy pearls, and half the pagan sites that are on there have everything. So, I mean, there's always going to be con artists willing to take care of those who don't think before they do anything.
Fooling his money.
Come on, religion in the past 2,000 years has been about making money.
Yeah, baby.
Look at the church, the Catholic Church, and look at how much gold they have. How flashy their decorations are. The stained glass windows, the robes. I mean, even going back before that, look at the Aztecs and how their garments, and you could pretty much go to any any pantheon and look at the temples, and people went and donated their money and their goods and their time to build these buildings, these sanctuaries, decorate them, and they got money to...
Yeah.
And I think not always, but off and on throughout history, you've had the people that have abused that. I mean, even going off of what I think Star said earlier about stories of the Bible, there's the one story of Jesus flipping out about the vendors in the temple. I mean, right there is a excellent story about people using your faith to make money. And he got pissed off about that. I mean, it might be a Christian story, but I mean, that goes very well to see what's been going on in the world now. I mean, especially with talking about all the witch shops and all this. You buy this now, it'll make your spell go better, or connect you with the priestess, or even with all the Christian shops that are out there. I mean, there's probably more Christian shops than there are pagan shops out there.
I mean, but how much of this stuff is really just the same level of crap? Like, this will make your penis bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's all that it is. It's home decor. It's... Yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. It gets frustrating.
To go off... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
To go off on a slight tangent on what Brandon said, I think one thing that we kind of forget, and it has to do with the baggage, is that, we pull from all of these different mythologies all over the world in our practices. And I think sometimes we forget that Christianity and Judaism and Islam have a mythology. That's kind of what the Bible is. It's the mythology. And so, as we're pulling from these other mythologies, it's okay to pull examples from their mythology too. Yeah, I think we forget that sometimes. It's just another mythos.
The main problem I have with all of those faiths is that they have the same mythology with slight variances because of edits done over the years, and yet they all say, no, we're right. No, we're right. You have to die because we're right and you're wrong. And they all come from the same book. They've just been changed by various kings and rulers.
I kind of sometimes wonder if you brought back Abraham and you're like, look what you started, if he'd be like, what the hell? I was just out, herding goats. Where did all this shit come from?
Like, Jesus? Please, everybody be nice to each other. You don't believe in Jesus, I have to kill you.
Yeah, I never said that. I just said, hey, everyone, I think really, not to proselytize, but I think you can sum up everything he said in one line, which was a very good movie quote, another movie quote, yay, which was, hey, everyone, be excellent to each other.
And party on, dude!
There you go, exactly right.
So great.
Actually, Dav the Bard of Obod, that when Jason interviewed him at Pagan Spirit Gathering, he asked him if he had any final advice, and that was his advice. Be excellent to each other and party on, dude.
He's absolutely right. I have to wonder if Jesus came back today, and I personally have my own views about was Jesus even real, but let's not start that one. If Jesus came back today and looked around at all the various churches and faiths and things, would he be impressed, or would he be shocked and ashamed at what he sees Christianity has become?
Shocked and ashamed.
In the
For some
words,
reason, I see his head banging against the cinder block wall repeatedly.
Yeah.
Muttering something in Aramaic that translates roughly to what the... I'm sorry, did I go there?
In the words of Margaret Cho, if Jesus came back, his message would be, "That's not what I meant!"
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Well, you have to think of the Holy Trinity being God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. So technically, the Holy Spirit and Jesus is here now. And look at the shit that is going on in the world today. In His name, and is this the Holy Spirit acting? So if it is the Holy Spirit in the mixture between God and Jesus, how merciful and how loving, and I think it still just all goes back to blood magic and blood faith. You know, how much blood can be spilled for a God equals how much power he has. I mean, it's that whole idea of with us, blood magic is...
I once read an analysis of the offerings of Cain and Abel. Cain gave an offering of grain, Abel gave an offering of meat, and God chose the blood sacrifice over the grains of the harvest, which angered Cain, and that's why he killed Abel. So God's preference was for the blood sacrifice, and so then Cain gave God the ultimate blood sacrifice of his own brother. So there.
I find it amusing how the only way I can get intelligent biblical conversation is either to gather up agnostics or pagans. You will note I excluded atheists.
Because we don't just follow it, we critique it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
We're the Siskel and Ebert of Christianity.
Yeah, we are. That's good. I give it 2 thumbs
I thought we were the
sideways.
Statler and Waldorf.
Well, they don't actually have to learn and understand what they believe, so long as they can say, "This is what I believe."
Right.
We have to learn and understand what they believe, so we could go, "No, see, we're right."
That, or, a lot of us had grown up in Christian faiths, and we're the ones that go, wait, hold on. Back up a minute, because this didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And when we don't find anybody to explain it, we take it upon ourselves to figure out what the hell's going on. And we just keep learning from there, and that's why we become pagan, because we learn better.
Yeah,
exactly.
Know thy enemy.
But, it's also the whole conversion process, because, we're leaving something for something else. And so as part of the conversion process, in order to put our past behind us, we have to understand why we're leaving what we're leaving, if we're actually going to fully embrace what we're coming into.
I don't know. I just see it as a defensive mechanism, because a lot of Christians will be like, "No, you just don't understand the message of Jesus."
I know. Just have to embrace.
I'm in good company. Neither do you. Sorry.
No. You don't understand the message. That's why you still listen.
If I may use this vulgar phrase, I think that just having a hard-on for Jesus isn't enough.
Amen.
Well, now I'm going to ask a question. If Jesus was alive today, would he be Jewish? Actually, he would technically be Jewish, but that aside, what group of people would he fit in with the best?
Pagans.
Oh, come on.
Hippies.
He would totally be hanging with us.
Yeah, those are the only ones that aren't uptight.
Hippies.
Maybe the hippies.
He was a barefooted homeless hippie. I'm sorry.
He was a dirty hippie.
I think he'd wander into a bad neighborhood so he could go home.
Yeah, he would.
I'm
I mean,
sorry.
come on. The guy hung out with prostitutes, and he hung out with tax collectors, and he was 33, and he wasn't married. That's like unheard of for a Jewish man. Yeah, I mean, exactly. He was obviously gay. Anyway, but I mean, he would totally be hanging out with us. Definitely.
So Jesus would be a gay, hippie, pagan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we just blew to
And a liberal.
Evangelical.
Hey, look, Fred Phelps' head just exploded. Cool.
Keep it up.
Yay.
No, there's actually a good podcast out there, Secrets in Plain Sight, and in his January 15th, 2011 episode, he goes into the host of the show actually describes how he was getting off the train, and he was shall we say a really pushy one of those people that really didn't understand Christianity too much, but was passing out flyers, become Christian, and he was totally afraid of the host, and yeah, it was just one of those. Yeah, he was trying to be polite, and then no, and the guy just, the Christian guy just got crazy, and then he started spouting off scripture because, well, he used to be in a seminary, a Christian seminary, so he knows his scripture. And this guy just got completely paranoid once he started spouting scripture at this Christian guy.
Yeah.
I have to admit that I have gotten into discussions with heathens who sort of have a similar relationship to the heathen lore that Christians have with Scripture. And when I started quoting the Havamal at him, he got quiet really quick.
Yeah, but there's a downside to using that strategy, because if it's somebody you know on a semi-regular basis, they're going to demify your every action for like the rest of your life.
Yeah, but if you're also true, know your freaking Havamal.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we can say that about the Christians in the Bible, but I mean, as human tendencies are human tendencies. I mean, that's...
You mean that they're just lazy?
Well, that too.
Yes.
All right, so let's derail this back on topic here. So we're going to go from the topic of witch kits, which is obviously what we've been discussing.
Oh, yes.
Witch kits.
Move on to the topic
discussion.
of how we're serious practitioners responding to this trend of people who want to do the quote-unquote cool stuff, but aren't willing to put forth the effort to do so safely.
They are grumbling and griping loudly. Yeah,
we're doing PCP episodes about that. I think we just had an episode about that.
They're looking for a big stick to beat them with.
I mean, I think we can take note of how the conversation went when we started talking about witch kits, and look where we ended up and how we focused on them so well.
That's true. It is more fun to talk about the cool stuff than the serious things.
Okay, here's what we should do. A couple of us should go out and actually, just for academic integrity, although this could be counterproductive, that means, we should go find a witch kit and buy it and do an actual inspection and appraisal.
I don't want to touch it, though.
Let's bring it to PSG. Somebody will buy it.
Okay.
We could have Antique Roadshow at PSG.
That would actually be awesome. Antique Roadshow at PSG, but that would also imply judging something's BS factor.
Well, there's going to be the Portable Witch Museum there, so, yeah.
I estimate this lovely pink Freya candle at "You're a stupid dumbass."
Well, see, this is a really, really lovely example of a 1940s anime, but you refinished it. Had you left the rust on it and the blood, it would have been worth a lot more. So unfortunately, you've completely diminished the value.
Especially when you decide to change it out with a Hello Kitty handle.
I think that in general, a lot of us will look at it and say, if you're not willing to put forth the effort, then we don't have the time or energy to even care to help you or anything like that. Anything worth having is worth the work to do it.
That, and I actually think that serious practitioners know enough to just wait out all the morons, because eventually the morons will either drift away or will and move themselves on the gene pool, like Darwinism in action.
I don't know. I kind of like the whole aspect of everybody needs to justify their weight. And the more people you have doing something, the more weight the organization or group, or however informal it is, the group of people need to carry that weight as a whole. And I kind of like the mentality of if you're not justifying your weight or you are weighing more than you are contributing, then you just get kicked out. Kind of like what we do on a podcast. You know, anybody that comes in and totally messes up our audio, we just remove them forcefully. And I've managed to convince the PPP to do this. Other smaller pagan organizations that are getting stuff done have started to adopt this policy. So I'm not sure. I don't know. We might have started a trend there.
Well, we tried being polite with somebody that was making the audio difficult, and we saw what that got us.
Well, I think that's one thing that pagans are still really good at. We're really good at trying to be polite and tolerant and understanding. But ultimately, when you're just dragging your feet and not contributing at all, well, yeah, we got to tell you goodbye. As there's now silence, as everybody's like, "Oh my God, am I messing up their audio?"
Believe
I'm
me,
actually
you're
just
a
hungry and
cakewalk
eating
compared to Jason.
munchies.
No, I think Dave's got a good point.
Go ahead, Star.
Oh, I was just gonna say I thought Dave had a good point that so sometimes you just have to you have to realize that you have to invest in people who are going to invest back into projects, and yeah, that's all I got to say. Sorry.
Not that we wouldn't know anything about a collective of a certain word that nobody knows the definition of, that is pagan, that would very much benefit from this policy.
I think with sort of going on topic, the people waiting and so on and so forth, let people's stupidity burn them. Let it weed them out to some degree. Hopefully they learn a lesson. If they don't, well, yeah, hopefully so many smashes in the head with the frying pan from trying to learn a lesson, they get taken out of the gene pool.
Serious practitioners, I think, know enough not to try to teach the morons, or can see who's worth teaching and who's not, but on a higher level than that, serious practitioners become leaders and become people like Anna Fox and Benjamin McCollum, whereas morons, of which we all know thousands, never amount to anything. Which in its own way is good.
So while we're on the whole topic of teaching and all that, that seems to be the theme of the night. Emily had some questions about how can the pagan way of doing things help public education in general. Are there any principles, ideas, values, etc. in paganism that could be used to improve the public education system? If so, what are they?
Smaller classes.
Yes. I don't know if values of paganism can be applied to public education. That tends to lend itself to church versus state, even if the church in question is a circle around a tree. But some aspects of how we approach things could be advantageous for students who need things less regimented. The most influential English teacher I ever had did not have her classroom seats in rows facing the teacher's desk. It was just a random horseshoe, and you can sit anywhere that you want to in the classroom. If you want to sit facing the back wall, you can, but you won't hear as much. So I think that for some people, a more organic approach will help. We, as pagans, may have found that a more analytic approach to a great many things is what led us here. I don't know about, well, let's see, values. There is an increasing trend I'm very pleased to see towards green awareness and addressing ecological concerns, which was invisible 20 years ago. Now most schools do have things like recycling centers I'm very pleased to see. But there, I think that's not so much a pagan thing as just a common sense thing.
I think one thing that maybe we can take, and I know not all pagans do this, but there's enough of us that instead of focusing on one aspect, we branch out and try to understand, like, Cometics don't always just read up on Cometicism. They'll read about a little bit of Asatru, and they'll read a little bit about Wicca, and they'll read a little bit about Hellenism. And I think that that's something that we could bring, that we don't have to just look at one aspect. The idea of branching out, even if it's not something that you do. So, yes, here's our idea of history, but here's how this country views it. Bringing something like that.
I think there's quite a few things that paganism does really well, especially Wicca, when it comes to the whole education process. One thing I've always liked about Wicca in particular is that everybody is subject to questioning. You can take the level 3 person and you can pull them aside and say, yeah, I think that's a bunch of crap. Can you justify that? And then they will give you a legitimate rundown of why that particular statement was legitimate. And everything's always open to research. And that's why there is no authoritative, yes, I am right because I am right, even if I might be wrong. Yeah, there's definitely that, well, let's seek out what the answer actually is. And you can't say something willy-nilly without being ready to defend why you saying that is correct. And I think another thing that it seems a lot of Wiccans, especially the eclectics, get really good in the self-driven education is they kind of learn things ad hoc as they need to learn them. So if there's a skill that's completely useless to them, they just bypass it. If there's a skill that they feel they need to learn, well, now you're driven to learn more about that subject.
I think paganism does have a lot to bring to major education because, for a long time, if you received an education, especially a higher education, your education was what they call the classical education. You studied the pagan philosophers and the pagan myths. You read Cicero and you read Plato, and you were reading plays by Greek playwrights. And so your education back, it used to be that a really good education was based in classical literature, and that imparted the traditional pagan virtues to people who were seriously seeking a proper education. And I think we've actually, since we've gotten away from that sort of thing and a lot of the reasoning and so forth that we used to emphasize in public education before, we made it more about doing busy work and learning about the fish of the week.
Basically.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that was a good thing, and I think that's something that's missing today. And it also, it was something that was a challenge. It's not easy to learn Cicero, and so to be expected to have that as a basis of your education was something that challenged people, and yeah.
Meanwhile, today we got to rely on forum trolls and grammar Nazis to encourage people to understand the English language, because the public education system simply doesn't do that. I mean, there's always that whip behind you if you don't learn, but there's never that carrot in front of you to encourage you to learn something. I mean, I think one thing that strikes me about a lot of people learning about paganism is you don't get a whole lot of, well, I had to learn this thing, but I've never ever found a use for it. I mean, you just don't hear that a whole lot.
think one of the biggest issues in education is that it's just memorize and regurgitate, and there's no emphasis on why you're learning or any room to question and to explore on your own. It's just memorize this and write it down on a test sheet.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, a lot of the reforms in education are starting at the college level and are slowly trickling down into the more K-12 public education type of scenarios where, because of the internet, just regurgitating information has become a practically useless skill. So what they're doing instead is having project-driven courses where everybody kind of works at their own speed. You know, if you're good at what you do, you're still challenged. If you don't know what you're doing, you're challenged. Anyway, you're going to learn something out of it. And you know, with the project-driven stuff, you can't BS your way through it. You got to actually learn something. And I think, you know, looking at a lot of how tradcraft works in a lot of places, you know, a lot of tradcraft, you know, whether you're listening to the Wigglian Way or whatever, it boils down to, at the end of your 1 year, if you want to be initiated, you got to do a ritual. You're not going to BS your way through a ritual.
Unless you're a star and you forget something and then hijinks ensue afterwards. But that's a story for another time. You know, I think another thing that paganism really emphasizes that I think is a good skill is that not only is questioning encouraged, but research is encouraged. And so you learn how to research, you know? And that's something that I don't think people sometimes realize is a skill. It's not so much knowing something, but knowing how to find an answer. You know, there are people who still don't understand how to use Google search. So it's not always, you know, knowing, well, it's not so much knowing things, but knowing how to learn and how to research is a valuable skill. And I think that's something that paganism emphasizes.
I totally agree. My father just went back to school, and he realized very quickly that studying is something you need to do constantly, because all the years he's been working and not really learning, he's forgotten how to study. And it's taken him several months to get back into the swing of actually doing research to be able to actually pass his classes.
Well, one thing I like about some classes in college is that they will teach you the theory in class, but the actual testing boils down to a practical application of that theory. So you still get that practical aspect, but you still have to do the out-of-class work to understand how to do the application of that theory.
That's good, because there, then, the student learns from the teacher, but and also by taking it outside the classroom, he also then teaches it himself again. So in a way, he learns it twice.
I think half the problem comes with the way that they're teaching teachers, but also the regulations that go into teachers when you have a federally funded school.
No, you're teaching towards a test.
Yeah.
No child left behind.
Yep.
As much as I hate to give credit for it, Glenn Beck in one of his books actually had a pretty good write-up on the school academic system for what it takes to fire a teacher.
It's pretty hard. I mean, you could rape a kid and still be a teacher.
Pretty much, yeah.
No, that's an actual instance that happened in New York City. The union decided to back them. It's like, oh, yeah, that goes my respect for that union.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, I was actually homeschooled for religious reasons. Haha, that worked well.
I like the results.
I was homeschooled too.
I think it turned out fine.
So, I think a lot of the alternative schooling things, like homeschool, for all the problems that there are with it, and I'm the first one to point out the problems. I think a lot of the alternative schooling ideas that are coming up are actually really interesting, and a lot of the things like homeschooling actually sort of mimics the way pagans learn. I think one of the reasons that I became so enamored with paganism initially was because my learning was self-driven, and I was homeschooled. So when I stumbled across a mention of Wicca, by the end of the night, I had done a lot of research, and I knew a lot about it. So it already fit my learning style. So I think, and I know pagan homeschooling is like a growing movement. I know women who are pagan who homeschool their children. And so yeah, I think that's interesting, and I'm interested to see where that goes and how well that works.
I think not just in paganism, but homeschooling in general is getting to be a huge thing. Even with the museum, I've seen an increase in the past 3 years that I've worked there with homeschool kids coming in. And they are usually, I mean, yeah, you have your exceptions to the rule where they're the unsocialized, afraid to speak because they're not allowed to research on their own because their parents force them to read the Bible instead of actually doing math kind of homeschooling. But most of them are the most curious, well-spoken, socialized, excited kids you would ever see. They're amazing.
Minus the excitement. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well,
but it's a good excitement.
Well, one of the interesting things about homeschooling, and I always think that this was one of the biggest bonuses for me having been homeschooled, is the fact that, it's really only now that I've entered my late 20s that I can actually talk to people who are in my same age range. Because as a homeschooled kid, I actually found it far more interesting to interact with people who were either far older than I was or little kids. And so I got used to talking to a huge range of ages and backgrounds, to the point that I didn't have like anything in common with kids my age. And it feels like it's just now that I've gotten older that, people my age have had, more experiences out in the world that they've actually become interesting to me. And I guess that sounds horrible, but it's the truth.
I think that's a very good point, because I've seen with people my age that, especially those who go to public school, that they don't know how to interact with people who are more than 3 years older or younger than them. And in college, it seems like it takes until about people's junior year to actually figure out how to interact with their professors. And I think that's really kind of detrimental to your personal growth.
I actually have two thoughts on this question. The first one, then, is that pagans, I think, and this is something that the school system can or should but won't encourage, is being allowed to think outside the box. It would really help students a lot to be allowed to think for themselves and research on their own beyond. But first they have to want to do research on their own beyond the classroom. If the classroom experience does not itself motivate them to learn more, then they won't be willing to try to learn more. And the second thought I have ran away from me. Oh, I remember it now. It came back. Yes, those helped. Thank you. They really did. They helped. Which was that a friend of mine was homeschooled for the first years of her life. She went to a public school in 4th grade. All the way through, she had been learning beyond what the 4th grade level would have been that she was going into. So the public education that she went into was not as bright as she herself was, and all she got out of these 6 months that he was there was that she learned how to be mean and she learned how to lie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you don't challenge people. They get bored and they start doing other things.
Yep.
I had absolutely perfect grades until I hit high school because it felt like I was in 7th grade all the way up through 12th. Because we would do the same things that everybody seemed to have problems with.
My shop teacher at Votech had a philosophy. If you looked bored or if you were acting out a little bit, he gave you something to do. Because he felt you were asking him for something to do. Great guy. He did a lot for me. And again, his favorite task was also assigning an underclassman for you to tutor. Excuse me, I'm going to go find a teddy bear.
I will say that my audio is being wonky, so I'm not sure if this is what Emily was touching on or not. That, you know, the problem with socializing, that not understanding how to do so well. And the one thing that public education does bring is the chance to learn your lessons while you still are under your parents' care. So even though it can be craptastic, they can still learn. But it's kind of that double-edged sword. There's pros and cons to both of them. It's just which ones do you feel are better?
Well, I think you know, a lot what Pagan thought is you are responsible for your own action or inaction. And while we see the public school system, at least K through 12, sinking like the Titanic, do you really want to have the inaction of leaving your kid there, or do you want to take the action of providing them with a quality education, even if the government won't do that for you?
Very true. Yeah, everybody's in different situations and things like that, so...
Mm-hmm. But it's also become easier than ever to do homeschooling, especially with the online courses that are available. I mean, you know, even when you're homeschooled, you still get, you know, the tuition for that kind of stuff paid for, you know, because, you know, that kind of comes out of the tuition that would be going to your kid for a public school anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, I think it's also, you need to factor that in, that it is easier than ever to do homeschooling. So that might explain an uptick in homeschooling, not just the Titanic course that our education system's on at the moment.
Oh yeah, I don't know about where everyone else lives, but here in PA, there's constantly commercials on television and radio for enroll your child in PA cyber school. And it's that they're desperately trying to get kids out of public education and into homeschooling because the public education system is just failing epically.
Especially Pennsylvania, where football is considered more important than education. I mean, you don't really
football is considered more important than, like, food and water here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, here in Texas, we take our football seriously, but we also take our academics extremely seriously. So you can knock on Texas all you want for our football habits, but you know, we also take the academics just as seriously down here. It's not like Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh, you know, the drinking city with a football problem.
Well, you know, I don't remember the name of it, and I'm not going to Google it right now. But there's actually a homeschooling program that's pagan, that's K through 12.
I heard about that.
Yeah, yeah, and I've corresponded with them before years ago, and they were really nice folks, and yeah, it was a really interesting project. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, if you're looking for any kind of pagan or homeschooling resources, I'd say listen to the Pagan Homesteader. She's got all kinds of resources for that on her show.
Cool.
And they're having all sorts of groups and apprenticeships for people who homeschool. There's large people that get together, and there's museums, and I believe NASA does something where if you are homeschooled, You get to go behind the scenes where you don't get to go on a school field trip.
I want to push the launch button. That would be awesome.
That would be really awesome.
I want to push the self-destruct button.
Sorry, it doesn't work. Budget cuts.
Hey, try these. Alt Control Delete.
The system predates the existence of Alt Control Delete, by the way.
Lovely.
Yeah, 1982.
That's
Alt
kind
Control
of
Delete,
disturbing.
Alt Control Delete wouldn't come around until Windows 1.0. Nifty nerd fact of the night.
Are you saying they still function on that level?
Yeah, the space shuttle, I mean, it's still pretty much the original software. I mean, it's got some upgrades, of course, but it's still software and hardware of 1982, man.
It is. That's true. It's old.
Well, I'd be surprised if there are Control, Alt, and Delete keys.
Of course, I suppose that means most viruses now wouldn't work on it, so that's a plus.
That's a plus.
I remember...
I'm gonna
I think it was my
edit
seventh...
that.
Well, we really gotta worry about somebody uploading a virus to the space shuttle that isn't connected to fucking anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
It worked in that movie. He blew up the alien mothership with it.
Mm-hmm. In about 7th grade, we actually went to a tour for NASA. One of their things in Virginia. Somewhere. I can't remember where it was. I was in 7th grade. But you each got a job, and half the time you would be in the control room, and half the time you would be in the mock space station, and you would have to deal with the computers and the actual programming. And that was horrible! There was no delete button. You put it in right the first time, damn it! There was no going back. It was the strangest system. And they're like, yeah, this is what we actually use, and these are excerpts from the actual books. These are, you're going to actually have to do what they do. And there were so many pages of crap. It was all like playing hide and seek in a dictionary.
Now you know why it takes like a crew like 5 years to prepare for one mission.
Yeah. Instead of fixing the quirk, they're like, well, if this quirk happens, hit this code. Why don't just fix it? Because that takes too much work. Just put in that code. It'll be good.
That reminds me of so many tech people that I have met in my life. They're like, no, just deal with the quirk. Just deal with it. I'm busy. There's a new episode of The Guild out. Just fix the quirk.
So the next Go ahead.
I've heard horror stories about the use of Excel for engineering purposes, where we all know what Excel is, and it's not really designed for this, but it is a powerful calculator if you so choose. Well, what would happen is there'd be rounding errors and this and that, and people would go and they'd keep making it work to do what they needed, and then later on when they're going to upgrade, people discover, well, wait a minute, I don't actually know how to do this. I just put it in here and it comes out there.
Scurvy. I've actually built asphalt and gravel conversion calculators in Excel. And yeah, if you're not the person who built that Excel calculator, you have no clue. You just put a number in and it comes out on the other side. But you can make some really nifty calculators in Excel. I'm just saying.
I have a question. Let's go from talking about asphalt in Excel to putting religion in schools.
Bad idea. Sorry.
How do we go about
it? It has the same gritty taste.
Miles keeps trying to keep us on topic.
Sorry.
Well, we almost got Dave beaten into submission for keeping us on topic. Now we got to break Miles, too.
Har. That's okay. I can drive fast and turn left. I live in North Carolina. That's what I learned.
I think that as far as religion in school goes, there would be a really awesome way to do it, but then again, we're talking with human people, so I don't think the ideal will ever be reached. But if we took it from a non-theological standpoint and say, well, this is what this group believes, and this is what this group believes, and this is how we interact, and just have a almost like sensitivity training, but not quite. So you just learn a basics of the religion.
Yeah.
I don't think this question's asking
awesome.
about religion in school at all. I mean, I think this question's asking about the crap we talked about for the past 30 minutes. How can we do it without shoving paganism down everybody's throats?
Because we just provide an objective overview of what this faith or that faith provides. We don't immerse the students in the practice of the faith. We just show them what it does.
Yeah,
and then let them choose if they want to pursue this faith or that faith or the other.
The problem is finding an unbiased teacher.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much about teaching about paganism as in adopting the same skill sets that paganism uses.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to dance naked around a bonfire to be able to look at things from multiple perspectives in the way that a pagan does.
Yeah, now the actual question, because nobody listening to this has actually heard the question, is how can we go about implementing these ideas without going down the road of putting religion in schools, or perhaps this is an issue we should stand back from?
Just teach children to think and learn for themselves. Don't try to just feed them information. Exactly. Don't just shove information down their throats. Teach them to find information.
I'm sure the unions will fight that. Don't worry.
Some families will probably be opposed to the idea of their kids being taught or even having mention of a different faith than the one that the child is being raised in at home, which may be why Star was homeschooled initially. I'm not sure. But I think that religion in schools is okay if you approach it from a purely academic frame of mind. If you try to immerse the child in a chosen religion of a school, I don't know if I quite phrased that right, but if you have this faith-based school versus that faith-based school versus another, okay, then you go to that school knowing that it employs this faith or that faith, and you can go to a Jewish-based school or Baptist or whichever. But if you want to have a completely arbitrary view of religion as a whole, and if you don't want to have to immerse the kids in the practice of any single faith, then I think that it should not be part of the curriculum other than purely academic observation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I hear this, I'm always reminded of a story I heard on Slashdot, and it was told from the perspective of a European student. And they had an American come into their science class. She was an exchange student. She was living in Europe. And, for those of you outside the U.S., for the past 15, 20 years, however long it's been, there's always been this debate of we should teach creationism in the science classes. And it's god-awful silly to everybody else in the world, but for some reason us Americans just don't see how fucking stupid it is. So there's this girl who's been raised in this belief of creationism and had gone to a school where creationism was taught as science, now is in a science class in Europe, and she's trying to say, well, God created the world 6,000 years ago, and the teacher just really bluntly says, no, get out of your fantasy world. That's not fucking scientists. That's fucking mythology. Stop believing that shit. Well, that's not what we're doing in this class. Start practicing science, or I'm going to fail you out of this class. And she started crying and weeping, but she was all right after that.
But, just because it sort of ties into this, actually, the reason I was homeschooled, believe it or not, was because my parents sincerely believed that the middle school that I would be going to, that the principal was a Satanist who ran covens of witches in the school. And so I was actually withdrawn from school to prevent me from being exposed to Satanism and witchcraft and paganism.
That's worked out quite efficiently.
Yeah, see that?
It did. It did. And what's so funny about that is, it is sort of ironic that the fact that my parents did that and sort of they went the opposite way to prevent that. They also decided to pull me out of church programs, which ironically gave me a lot more time to study religion on my own instead of what I was fed. And if they had not have done that, if they had left me in school and if they had left me in the church programs, that I probably wouldn't be pagan today. So when people talk about the pagans who really caused a ruckus back in the 80s and 90s in Atlanta, I'm like, yeah, they're the reason I'm pagan. For causing a ruckus.
Ruckus causer.
So yeah, I think when you force religion in any form into education, I think it backfires. I think secular education and religious education should be kept separate. Just because they're two different things, mm-hmm. and they have two totally different spheres. And it's important to be able to say that, what you learn in one place might not be considered sacred, and what you learn in another place it is considered sacred. I'm really big on being able to say that, what this is right here is not necessarily sacred. And then now we're moving into a different space, and this space is sacred. Sort of like in the way that, every morning you have a bowl of Cheerios, and your bowl of Cheerios is nothing special. And then you get all excited on the morning that you have an omelet, and you have bacon, and, and a fresh bowl of fruit. That's all of a sudden awesome. It wouldn't be nearly as awesome if, you didn't have the bowl of Cheerios, the other 6 days of the week. Sorry, I went on a tangent. I'm hungry.
When I was a kid, my parents would tell me, don't open the basement door, never open the basement door, don't open the basement door. And so for years, I didn't open the basement door. And then one day I felt really brave, and I opened the basement door, and all these amazing things like trees and clouds and sunshine and grass.
In your basement?
Oh, you silly person, you completely didn't get the joke. That's okay.
Dave's a
I
literal.
forgive you.
Yeah,
you were stuck in the basement. We understand.
Right, you silly people. About
some of our best qualities.
The worst example, though, of religion in schools I've ever seen, I didn't see this personally, thank God, was I heard about someone say to a child of about 5 or 6 years old, told this kid, you must convert 2 people to Christianity every day, or you make Jesus cry.
Oh, wow.
Don't tell a 5-year-old kid that. That's just beyond retarded.
That's horrible.
I'll give you $20 if you make Jesus cry.
And for as impressionable as kids are, that's like torture.
My little cousin was actually... Go ahead.
Go ahead. I've actually heard worse. I was actually told that God hated me and wanted me to kill myself.
Wow.
And who told you this?
My Sunday school teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, was it just you in particular, or was it everyone?
It was me in particular.
Cute.
That's not...
That's okay. I'm demonically possessed, so you're in good company.
My 5-year-old little cousin was pulled out of Catholic school because they taught the kindergartners about the crucifixion and explained after telling them all about how Christ was tortured, how that it was because of them that he was tortured that way.
And then the kids?
Yeah, a bunch of 5-year-olds were told that Christ was tortured and killed for them.
You know what? That was what my Catholic school was, too. That's part of the reason my mom told me out.
For them or because of them?
For them.
Okay.
A man was tortured and killed for them. So they needed to be good people because that happened for them. And my 5-year-old little cousin had, like, screaming bloody murder night terrors for weeks after that.
That reminds me of a wonderful t-shirt I saw a while ago, which said, "If you don't sin, Jesus died for nothing."
Oh man, I want that shirt.
I approve.
I love that.
See, that's one of the things I always wondered. If Jesus died for our sins, why is it a big deal when we commit them? We're already forgiven. So let's have some fun.
I think the idea was Jesus died for original sin. And that was it.
Well, that means we get to screw around as much as we want.
There was something, it wasn't so much that he died so, your sins would already be forgiven. If I remember correctly, it was everybody was stuck in the ground because they sinned, and his suffering and dying allowed those people to be able to go to heaven or something like that. Or it was some really weird, like, everybody was just suffering and dying in the ground and lying there with the worms. But because Jesus suffered and died, he was able to go to heaven.
That totally sounds like a Monty Python skit. They were just lounging around in the dirt, they were. That sounds like Monty Python. Yeah.
I don't know, Catholics are weird.
Baptists are weird too. I was told that dinosaur bones were put in the ground by the devil to tempt us. Because there's nothing more tempting than a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
That Henry Tambor posted a while ago about nowhere in the Bible does it say that Jesus was not a velociraptor.
Yes.
Bible has been said officially too many times tonight.
Yes. Apparently this has been your episode of Bible study here on the Pagan Center podcast.
Bible.
B-I-B-L-E. I
still hate to say it. Go on.
I could do a round of Father Abraham if you just want to just round out the night.
Sure, we could use some extra audio.
No, that's okay.
The army had a lie. E-I-E-I-O. Anyways.
All right, we'll be back with final thoughts after these messages. And we're back with final thoughts.
My final thought is my internet does clear, and there should be no reason for it to randomly go on and off.
As Amber's internet cuts out in the beginning of that statement.
Damn it! I'm just going to grumble at the internet. That's all.
Good.
I think my final thought is that we kind of rambled a lot and we did a lot of tangents. So I really hope that we answered Emily's questions.
Surprisingly, we did.
I think my final thoughts on this entire evening's topic would be that, yes, that if you want to learn, you should be willing to do some research on your own, not expect anyone to just hand you all the answers in a big, shiny, pretty box. Sometimes the answers might be dirty, and the answers that you find might lead to more questions. and the questions might make you a little dirty. You might have to get your hands into things you might not understand, and that's good because that's broadening your horizons. I do not want to see instant witch kits become prevalent. I don't want anyone to go to Walmart and go, I'm a witch now. Bing! Yay! Happy me. There should be more to it than that. But what we can teach students about witchcraft, I'd like to think that what we teach students about paganism, witchcraft, magic and such should also be able to provide them tools to see into the real world beyond what they might apply to the coven or the craft or whichever.
My final thoughts are that finding a teacher can be a great move, but also to always remember to question and think for yourself.
Why should we question things? He says questioning what you just said.
Ha ha.
Har har.
My final thought, well, I just had a brain fart, so I guess that'll work. Or maybe a strategically placed question mark. Sorry.
Scurvy's final thought is,
Well, one person got it.
Oh,
well.
My final thought is don't be afraid to think outside the box. Don't be afraid to question the box. You know what? Don't be afraid to bust out of the box and go into a scary box and question that box.
That's right.
Chase down boxes and question them.
Beat them up if you have to.
And put that box in another box and mail it to yourself and smash it with a hammer.
And if that doesn't work, just put out a lot of insulting statements on your podcast that grabs their attention, and then you can question them.
Yay!
Sorry, had an Emperor's New Groove moment.
I think my final thought goes to pagans tend to criticize a lot of Christians quite easily. We've heard the phrase, going to church doesn't make you a Christian, the same as going into a garage doesn't make you a car. I would hope that we would hold those same values that we criticize to ourselves and the rest of our peers. Whether it's the ease, whether it's the hypocrisy, all the things that we criticize, I hope that we would have the courage to look at ourselves in the same light.
Indeed.
Okay, somebody needs to give Amber a blessed be.
Blessed be.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Please, anyone listening to the show, don't believe we are just slandering the Christian faiths. We make fun of ourselves, too.
Yeah, I mean, just listen to the Pagan Comedy Minute.
I'm a
Just hear the
Wiccanist.
things I say about Wicca.
Hey.
Thank you, Star.
We love you for that, Brandon.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I have to give some sort of feedback for us to laugh at every now and again. Oh, if my internet is still up, I'll throw my final thought in.
I think your internet is still here.
Hurry,
Okay.
hurry.
Everybody went really quiet for a second, so I'm like, oh, did it cut out again? Maybe not with the education system, but I think society in general can take a page out of the paganism book in the fact of we tend to look at what's around us and contemplate and look for more answers than what's just given to us on a silver platter. And I think not necessarily education, but society in general could use to learn from us on that aspect.
I think my final thought is 3 hours is not enough sleep.
Not usually, no.
What's sleep?
You just have to get used to it.
That could be an episode.
Actually, we got a YouTube video up on what happens if you don't have enough sleep.
Yeah.
You
See,
get an
episode
achievement
13.
award. You get an achievement award.
You see up people's noses that you did not want to see up.
The sleep-deprived pagan
Hey man, we got
podcast episode could be very fun.
Dude, we made a whole video series out of that. What are you talking about?
There's mixed opinions about me podcasting while sleep deprived and countering it by exploiting allergies and caffeine. I've gotten many mixed reviews about that. Passive aggressively and snarkily, but the message got through.
But if you want to see Scurvy completely sleep deprived, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/PCP Podcast.
I love you too, Dave.
All right, Star and Barrett, we're the last two waiting for final thoughts.
I already gave mine.
Okay, we're going to take your give Amber a Blessed Be as a final thought.
I didn't really have much to say this episode, so I don't really have a final thought.
How about an initial thought? Let's start there.
I had something to say, so it wouldn't be an initial thought either. But, well, I'd say that going back to one of the first topics we talked about, that I actually had something to say and kind of just didn't have the initiative to say something, was when we were going back where it was a bad thing for a teacher to just say no to a student. I kind of thought there are people that just give you a bad vibe, and if someone was asking me to teach them and I had a bad vibe from them, I'd say no. Just kind of something I thought.
Cool. And that wraps up these episodes of the Pagan Centered Podcast, PCP. We'll be back next week when we talk about... let me see what we're talking about.
Pantheacon.
We are talking about Pantheacon, that's right. So Stor Foster of Patheos.com will come back and tell us all about Pantheacon 2011 next week on the live recording, which I don't know when the hell that is on the recorded feed. So good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night. Or good morning.
Good
Or good afternoon.